Hey everyone, I'm Tommy Thompson and you're watching AI in Games, a series about research and applications of artificial intelligence in video games. In this video, we're taking another look at player modelling, but unlike our previous videos on research in Battlefield 3 and Team Fortress 2, we're looking at how a commercial video game replicates the behaviours of its players for gameplay purposes. A challenging prospect from the outset, but even more so when we consider its application in fighting games. In this video, we're going to take a peek under the hood of the 2013 reboot of Killer Instinct. There's a lot to love and even more to talk about in Killer Instinct, a game initially developed by Double Helix and later evolved and matured by Iron Galaxy. The revival of a franchise developed by Rare for arcades, followed by releases on the Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64. But we're interested specifically in Shadow Mode, a game mode and function released in Season 2 of Killer Instinct in 2015. Shadow Mode allows for players to construct and fight AI-driven fighters that are designed to match your own capability when playing as a given character. After 3 training sessions in the dojo, the Shadow AI is capable of replicating a portion of the player's behaviour, with many of your strategic decisions being mapped to that AI avatar. Once established, your Shadow can be sent off to fight your friends or other random players on Xbox Live. Perhaps more interestingly, it can act as something of a training tool, given it exposes flaws in your own fighting style and allows you the chance to reflect on your attack strategies. Fortunately, your Shadow can be updated over time, with the opportunity to add data from later battles into the AI model that builds your Shadow's decision-making system. So now we're going to take a look at how it all comes together, the AI techniques used to deploy it and the inspirations that drove it. But before we do that, we need to talk a little about complexity of the problem this is trying to address. For those unfamiliar, fighting game strategy is actually rather complicated, but the methods used to deliver fighting game AI seldom reflect that experience.
Round 1. Fight!
Fighting games are typically built on multiple tiers of mechanics, ranging from basic movement to the introduction of special attacks and combos. The template set by Street Fighter 2 has since been adapted over the years by pretty much every successful 2D fighting game franchise, such as Mortal Kombat, King of Fighters, Samurai Shodown, the Capcom vs series, and of course, Killer Instinct. The subsequent strategies that emerge are often highly contextual, as we need to think not only about what our opponent is doing, but also what we want them to be doing in order to do maximum damage. This introduces a number of high-level strategies such as rushdowns, close-range aggressive play to try and force player error, footsies, where players shuffle in their movement to try and get the opponent to expose themselves to attack, zoning, where players use far-range projectile attacks to keep players at bay, but also setups, where you execute actions in advance of a combo in order to position both the player and opponent to create the best opportunity. Now, much of this requires fast and fluid response to the game environment, with most players responding to game signals at around 12 to 19 frames in a 60 frames per second game. A big part of playing fighting games at a competitive and professional level is to be able to minimise that response time as well as build your understanding of how well you will respond to changes in the game. The need to plan ahead, anticipate player action, and react to enemy behaviour establishes fighting games as something akin to speed chess, with the risk-reward of the current setup being re-evaluated on an almost per-second basis. Now, the truth is that most AI implementations in fighting games don't really replicate that level of strategic complexity. In fact, most of their actions are built as finite state machines, where in the event of a specific player action, they will respond using a series of pre-built macros, where the AI will execute multiple actions in sequence in order to achieve a desired outcome. These macros are accompanied by a number of individual variables that dictate the response rate of the system itself. These variables often relate to things such as block frequencies, block and counter accuracy, and time to execute specific actions or action macros. As these frequencies and accuracy are reduced, we ultimately establish easy fighting game AI, which is often rather stupid and fails to respond to player behaviour. Meanwhile, expert AI players are often a subject of frustration given their perfect blocking and counter reflexes. This often leads to cheap and frustrating boss battles in fighting game arcade modes, such as Gil from Street Fighter 3, Shao Kahn of Mortal Kombat, and of course, Idol from the original Killer Instinct. In these instances, players need to exploit weaknesses or gaps left in the AI's behaviour in order to defeat it. Ultimately, a high-level AI fighter doesn't fight like a human does. What it gains in block and counter accuracy, it lacks in any intelligent or nuanced strategic decision-making. This is rather ironic, given the metagame at esports level is the long-term strategic play in each round or match. Previous efforts on intelligent fighting game AI, such as the Amiibo fighters in Super Smash Bros. Or the AI training mode in Virtua Fighter 4, still adhered to this parameterized template. But in this case, Shadow Mode aims to fully replicate your fighting style on a per-situation basis, very much adopting the Drivatar approach from Forza and applying it to fighting games. Given the shadows are stored online, you can arrange to fight against your friend's shadow for practice for that big matchup, or even see how well you stack up against competitive professional players. It not only provides a near unlimited stack of player-generated opponents within Killer Instinct, but gives casual or novice players a chance to stack up against other, more experienced human players. This can prove really useful in bridging that gap from the AI single-player modes to the online arena, given that Shadow AI more accurately reflect the challenges faced when heading into ranked online multiplayer, allowing players to recognise how people actually play the game online. So how did Iron Galaxy bring this to life? Let's take a look at how the Shadow AI gathers its player data.
Take that.
The Shadow AI that is built for a given character is achieved by recording every action in every match the player makes when playing as that character. This includes every movement, jump, block, counter, and combo sequence. The rates at which information is recorded varies depending on the action itself, with fixed durations for standard attacks, with movement and combos being modelled in a more continuous thread. Combos are recorded right down to the animation frame count, which will prove really critical later on. At the same time, the current state of the match is recorded. Character health bars, shadow meters, distance between players, time remaining, and much more. The Shadow system records every single piece of information in a given match, with absolutely zero data being ignored. With these actions and states recorded, the next process is to establish what is known as patterns, associations between actions that take place over small periods of time to states of the world. A parsing system is able to read the low-level actions and establishes what higher-level behaviours are occurring. Special move setups, zoning, traps, combos, combo breakers, counters, shadow counters, even when you taunt your opponent. This is achieved courtesy of Iron Galaxy's Derek Neal, an ex-tournament player and director of production on Killer Instinct who helped establish how information should be parsed, but also, later on, how it should be recognised. This process typically results in 400 to 700 patterns being established in each match, and 3 matches in the Shadow Dojo, which we are watching right now, are required for your Shadow to have a base level of competence. The Shadow system retains information on up to 40 matches for a Shadow when fighting against a specific opponent. So for my Fulgor Shadow to be effective at fighting Jago, it could be storing up to 28,000 patterns just for that matchup. Given that this is on a per-opponent basis, in theory, the system could record over 750,000 patterns in total in order for just one Shadow to effectively fight every character released between Seasons 1 to 3 of Killer Instinct. Each collection of patterns to world states for a given matchup is known as the model for that Shadow. With each model in place, we now have a collection of pairings that tells us in a given state what our Shadow should do to mimic the player's behaviour. But how do you pore through all this stuff so quickly to give the best possible response? The answer can be found in an AI technique known as case-based reasoning. Case-based reasoning is an AI principle of inductive reasoning that's derived from human approaches towards problem solving. More specifically, it's driven by the notion that human reasoning derives from prior experience. By modelling our prior experiences, we can then make intelligent decisions towards new problems by considering how similar they are to ones we have already solved. Case-based reasoning is typically modelled as a 4-step process: retrieval, reuse, revision, and retention that is driven by modelling examples of a given problem and the action made to resolve it, known as cases. Having accrued a collection of cases stored in a compact but quickly accessible format, We can then use these 4R methods to make intelligent decisions, but also update and maintain our knowledge base. Retrieval is the process of finding previous problems similar to the one we are in now by assessing their applicability. Reuse is when we then use these retrieve cases to find the appropriate action to take. Revision evaluates how well the chosen action performed and updates whether it proved practical in the situation we were in. Retention is the process of deciding whether the specific case we've encountered is relevant for storing for future use as an individual case. This process enables a decision-making system that generalizes our previous experiences in order to make intelligent decisions in the future, but can also update our knowledge of the problem the more times we discover it. It's a technique that proves highly useful in commercial and industry areas, where a continued influx of new data can be used to improve its accuracy. As such, it's found useful applications in areas such as fault diagnosis and engineering, anticipating court decisions based on legal precedents, recommendation systems in online shopping and customer support, as well as fraud detection. The application of this process to shadow mode now makes sense. The recording of actions and states as patterns are the cases used by the reasoning system. The tricky part is how this information can then be retrieved and updated in real time during a match. So let's take a look at how that works. Given this large set of action patterns, the trick is now to make the right decision at any point during a match. Bruce Hales of Iron Galaxy, developer of the Killer Instinct Shadow AI, revealed that the system is reliant upon a method known as nearest neighbours, where over 40 metrics are used to define how similar a state from a recorded pattern is to those currently happening in-game. These metrics range from recognising if both players are on the ground or in the air, to more nuanced understandings of play, establishing whether the player is acting defensively or ready to commit anti-air attacks. Some metrics are even character-specific, such as the location and status of Maya's knives. Using these metrics, the retrieved collection of actions in those proposed gameplay patterns provide viable options for the Shadow to execute. The Shadow AI then ranks based on the perceived value of each action and selects what it deems appropriate, but with a small probability it may switch to a lower ranked action in order to trick its opponent. Now, in order for this process to be accurate, the system often records data in a way that is relative to a specific in-game moment, rather than a 100% accuracy to the original state. So for example, distance and health are often recorded relative to your opponent rather than specific values. This means that the action associated with that pattern will be applicable in different circumstances, allowing for the system to establish context. Retrieval also considers the sequence of actions preceding the current moment in the game, such that it can establish the appropriate response. If it's clear that the opponent is setting up an attack, the Shadow can respond with a counter. This boils down to the relevance of whether a player or an opponent is executing a combo and the stage it's currently at. Given this ensures the Shadow can either progress their combo or attempt to counter the opponent at just the right moment in time. This is why animation frame counts are recorded during the annotation process, so the Shadow knows exactly when to trigger a breaker or a reversal. Otherwise, given the nature of Killer Instinct, it would almost never work. When retrieval takes place and the Shadow executes an action, it models the success of that action or strategy and updates its relevance during the match, allowing the Shadow to adapt and change its strategy during gameplay. This means that if a Shadow is repeatedly being punished for making a specific action in a particular moment, it will shift priorities to another strategy mid-match. This re-evaluation can even be executed on a much more granular level. If the Shadow is executing a combo and the pattern's conditions will no longer hold, then a similar valid pattern may overlap and take control. This is pretty useful when, say, a combo is meant to kick off following a successful action, but the opposing player actually blocked it. A fallback plan of how to respond to that attack being blocked can now kick in instead. But also what's interesting is even combos that are ended in the recording via combo breakers are maintained, given it provides an opportunity for a similar combo to take over during gameplay, given the system can try and avoid its combo being broken by the player. However, the system is still limited in many respects due to the expert knowledge required to craft it, as well as the data it needs to accumulate from training. The metrics being used for the retrieval and storage process are reliant upon a designer with an intimate knowledge of how to actually play the game at a competitive level, an issue that doesn't impact Killer Instinct for sure, but it's important to consider when developing your own case-based Shadow AI techniques. In addition, the shadow needs to be able to watch its human counterpart execute specific actions several times in order for it to really establish that pattern in its model. Hayle himself admits that in some cases, even the 40 match limit per opponent can still prove insufficient in building a complete and rich set of behaviours. But ultimately, the Shadow AI is a versatile system capable of adapting to changes in a player's strategy. Its behaviours appear far more realistic than those we've typically seen in fighting games, and are able to provide a fun and interesting addition to a player's training regime. But what do you think? In this video we've seen several shadows in combat, 2 of them recorded from my own gameplay. Killer Instinct is a free-to-play game on both Xbox One and Windows 10 PCs, and you can try your hand at creating your own shadows. You can even fight against my shadows you see in this video and see whether you could best me at Killer Instinct. Be sure to look up my profile at Get to the Chopper and try it out yourself.
I'm afraid your path ends here.
Oh, alright, some killer cuts to round off this video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video on Killer Instinct. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a real pleasure to put this one together. Not only am I a huge fan of fighting games in general, but Killer Instinct is a franchise that's dear to my heart. So getting a chance to talk about this game has been a real treat. If you've finished the video and are still wanting to know more about the AI methods behind it, check out our AI 101 video on case-based reasoning, which goes into more detail on how this method works and learn a bit more about the AI theory behind it. And you know what, it's been fun in games, I've enjoyed working on this video, but it's not as straightforward as that. AI in games is a time-consuming and expensive series to produce. As such, its survival is reliant heavily upon the crowdfunding we receive thanks to our sponsors on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, please consider sponsoring our channel via the link in the description and on screen now. For as little as $1 a video, our patrons not only get their names in the credits shown on screen now, but get access to our monthly newsletter, behind the scenes videos and early access to new content. But perhaps most importantly, patrons get to vote on future case studies and Let's Play diaries. So let's take a moment to look at what's up for the next vote. Player performance analysis in Tomb Raider Underworld, Elizabeth's utility AI system in BioShock Infinite, or we'll take a look at Angelina, a system that creates its own video games. Be sure to hit the link in the description or head over to patreon.com/AI_and_games for a chance to vote on the next entry in the series. As always, my thanks to all of the wonderful people who help keep AI in games going. You help support this show and make the next video a reality. The least I can do is give you all a chance to decide on what that video will be. And with that, I'm gonna go play some more Killer Instinct. I've been Tommy Thompson and this has been AI in Games. Thanks for watching.